guys, it is April from Getting Hooga With It. Today is day 4 of the Sweet Spring Read series. I hope you're liking it so far. Today we're going to be talking about Gothic romance. Now, I'm not talking about Jane Eyre, like the true meaning of Gothic literature. I'm talking about more modern day Gothic romance, although there is one classic that I'm going to be talking about here. So these are books that I have read that I have absolutely loved, that I think would be perfect for spring. I think a lot of people associate Gothic romance with the fall or the winter, and for me it's just not so. I guess it's because I love Kate Morton, and to me Kate Morton falls under that Gothic romance genre. I actually have a whole section on my bookshelf right here that I consider Gothic romance, and yes. So we're going to be diving into that. So let's get into it. Why don't we start out with some Kate Morton? This is a book that I read last year during the spring, and it's The Distant Hour. I really enjoyed this book. I think out of all of her books, this felt like the biggest nod to Gothic literature to me. So in this book, we're following a mother and a daughter. The daughter is visiting her mom, and a letter comes in the mail. She gives the letter to her mother. Her mother has a breakdown. She runs to her room, shuts herself in, and will not talk about what the letter entails, but it's clearly upset her. And what comes to pass is that we find out that her mother, during World War II, was sent to the countryside, just like many children and teenagers were at that time. She was sent to the countryside, and she lived in this very old castle with sisters. And what happened there affected her a lot. So this daughter decides to go and visit this old castle and visit these sisters and find out what really happened to her mom during the war. Next up, I've got to include this classic. I just have to. It's Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. In Rebecca, we're following our main character who kind of works as an elderly person's companion. She is out on this trip with this elderly woman, and she meets this very, handsome, very wealthy man, and he starts to pursue her and quickly proposes to her, and she agrees. She leaves this elderly woman and goes to Manderley. Now, Manderley is his estate, and he used to live there with his wife, Mrs. De Winter, but Mrs. De Winter died. And now there's a new Mrs. De Winter. And yet she's feeling like she's constantly being compared to Mrs. De Winter. And she's starting to become a little bit obsessed with the first Mrs. De Winter and what happened to her. And I absolutely loved Rebecca. If you haven't read Rebecca, there is no better time than the present. I hope that you do. The next book I want to recommend to you is The 13th Tale. I read this as a buddy read with Lindsay from The Wandering Reader, and I think we both really enjoyed this book. In this book, we are following a young woman who has a bookshop with her father, and she also writes biographies on the side. One day she receives word that this very famous woman wants her to come and write down her biography. Now, this woman has been very evasive and very obscure about her life. She's met with many journalists in the past who've tried to dive into her history and her life's history. And she's always told them lies. She's told them really random things. Each time it's a different story. And so our main character is wondering if she's going to get the truth. And so we meet this elderly woman and sit down with her and hear what happened to her in her life. I also just finished reading Tangerine a few weeks ago and fell head over heels. In this book, we're following our main character, Alice. She lives with her husband in Tangier in the 1950s. And one day, one of her old college friends, it was actually her roommate, shows up in Tangier. And she should be really excited to see her old friend, and yet she's not. There is history between these two that has pretty much ruined their friendship, and you kind of unpeel this amazing little onion and you find out what happened between these two people. This is a really creepy kind of read. I absolutely loved it. And it's incredibly atmospheric as well. It's atmospheric in the same way that I found Rebecca atmospheric. So yes, let me know in the comments below. Do you guys read Gothic literature or Gothic romance during the spring, or do you guys have a specific time of year that you guys like to read Gothic romance? I would love to know. And then tomorrow is day 5. We're going to be diving into the newest releases in historical fiction. This should be really fun. So I'll see you then. Bye guys.